Alright guys, here we are, Cleveland Moto. Today we've got an odd duck for you. Well, in this case, it's not a duck, it's a goose. Yes, we have a 1998 Moto Guzzi V11EV. And this bike is a bike that you should know about. Why? Well, they started building the V11 in 1997. They kept building it all the way until 2012. That's right, when I became a Moto Guzzi dealer, that year I could have ordered this bike in a stunning, what I like to call a Ronald McDonald paint job, which would be like a burgundy and yellow two-tone. Now this is the gray with black. This bike was, or is, 1100 cc's. It is fuel injected. It puts out a reported meaty 75 horsepower. It is a nice torquey ride. It is fuel injected and it is shaft drive. So that's cool. 2-valve motor. It is not the hydraulically adjusted valves. This requires manual valve adjustment. But with Guzzis, it's really easy to do because you don't even have to take the gas tank off. You're going to notice triple Brembo disc brakes. You're also going to notice spoked wheels that do not require the use of inner tubes due to that design of the spokes going to the outside of the rim. So you can do tubeless tires on this. In fact, it's meant to carry tubeless tires, and that configuration of having the spokes laced into the outside of the rim allows you to do that. Now, these bikes, at the first blush, when you're first looking at it, doesn't look that strange, but it's not until you're riding it that you get to appreciate how really strange it is. If you're not noticing already the fact that this bike has floorboards, you should. And there's a very strange configuration with that brake pedal, and that brake pedal and the little nubbin behind it is one of the things that some people love and I don't love about this motorcycle. It requires me to lift my foot all the way up to operate that brake. And this bike has hydraulically linked brakes. So what I find is with this particular machine, the little nubbin on the back is actually free to rest your heel on so you can get good modulation of the rear brake. It was only after riding one of these for a while that I discovered that's what the little nubbin was on the back of the pedal. So you could actually rest your foot on it. This one's resplendent with the GV Touring cases, the quick disconnect large GV Touring cases. Those things will swallow a helmet and a jacket no problem. It has the factory Moto Guzzi windshield on the bike already, and it has a rear luggage rack. This bike has been lovingly maintained for 17,960 miles by its previous owner, and brought it into the shop, and I made him an offer, and here we are. I am now the owner, albeit temporarily, I'm sure, of this Moto Guzzi V11. I'm sure you will see this shortly. We'll clean it up, and we'll get it in our inventory for sale at the shop at Cleveland Moto. But before we do all that, I wanted to take you guys out for a ride and talk a little bit about this very interesting motorcycle. So let's fire it up and take us for a spin. Now, this is a fuel-injected motorcycle. You're going to notice the Jiffy stand on the side, very much like a Harley-Davidson police motorcycle. That Jiffy stand gives you all the lean angle in the world. It's also very unlikely to sink into the grass because look at how long that thing is and how much purchase it gives you. So much so they put a nubbin there too. Guzzi loves their nubbins, so you could easily retract that. It does have an enricher circuit. It is fuel-injected, so it does start quite nicely. I'll give the bike a second for the oil pressure to come up. When you do see this around the gas tank, this is not corrosion. This is actually hydrocarbon deposits from the fuel. Gas vapors leach out around fuel tanks, and these things accumulate there. They can be cleaned up quite easily with a little bit of a green scratch pad. Go gentle with it. Even over-the-counter, like a WD-40 would work fine for that. You do notice it has this big windshield. It's not too tall, though. I can see over the windshield, which I do prefer that with the windshields. It is giant. It is truly the definition of a windshield. But boy, howdy, check out the size of that thing. So yeah, into a nice idle here, a good cadence. Now, about these floorboards. So, I'm a 6'1" fella, and I have size 11 foot. And the heel toe, take a look down here. My foot is longer than the gap between the heel and the toe. So just something to be aware of if you've not ridden one of these before, that the heel-toe gap can be rather long. Let's go down Lake Road today. Okay, so easy change into second. A lot of people complained that the gear shifting on these was clunky. Again, I tend to reserve more of my complaints for the rear brake. having to have my foot up on that perch is more of an issue for me than the clunky gear shift. Now, using the heel toe as you should, the heel toe functions quite nicely. It doesn't require any excessive amount of pressure, and with 18,000 miles on it, this bike goes into gear really nicely. Now, this bike has the factory exhaust on it, so it is very quiet, and I've noticed when I was driving it home from the shop last night, about 18 miles, it's really a happy bike. There's nothing obviously strange about the bike. There's no excessive play in anything. It works just fine. Steering head bearings feel good. Everything else about the machine feels fantastic. They're just a weird bike. They're just a little quirky. The thing with these bikes is you can't ever tell any Guzzi cognoscenti anything bad about the California line. They were, Moto Guzzi, that they came, the edict came down from God himself, and don't anyone dare say anything bad about their favorite Italian brand. And they are usually very good. These bikes, I've had customers with hundreds of thousands of miles on these things that just absolutely swear by them. Now, the styling is, well, it's 1998, but, remember, this bike was launched in 97. And that being said, the styling reminds me of a 1981 Honda CB750 Custom. There's nothing about the bike that looks like 1998. It's sort of that teardrop-shaped gas tank. Now, this does hold over 5 gallons, so that's pretty nice. You're going to get a long range on this bike. I think at the test of the time, we're saying a range of over 200 miles, which is consistent for math. It does have the fully adjustable, both for compression and rebound, front suspension. The rear suspension is preload only. And I do find that these do tend to be pretty solid, and they do hold their oil. So we haven't seen a ton of these dumping their guts out on the garage floor. So they've definitely stood the test of time for a bike that's been out now for some, 22 years. Back to the styling. We got the buckhorn handlebars, which sitting on the bike, we're appreciating the fact that I'm in an extremely natural riding position here. My feet are where my feet want to be. My knees are where they want to be. My butt's where it wants to be, et cetera, the whole way up. Everything, the bike falls easily to hand. I don't have to reach far for anything. And I'm in a very relaxed riding position. Now, the look from the side, the first thing that you call attention to is it's got a short wheelbase. And that is, you're like, oh, well, my knees are going to hit the heads. Well, again, long inseam here, 34-inch inseam, and my knees or my shins are not hitting the heads unless I scooch forward in the seat. If I scooch all the way forward in the seat, then I can get my shin to hit the left cylinder head. But otherwise, if I'm seated in a normal position, no, I don't hit them. As you can see, it's just a real comfortable riding position. So when some people find the design of this bike challenging, or they just flat out don't like it, or I've heard people say that it was the Spaghetti Sportster, that it was trying too hard to emulate the looks of a Harley Davidson. Jesus, I think it was trying too hard to emulate the looks of either a Honda Shadow, or the CB750 Custom, that year that they went to the dual overhead cam and they went to that sort of Harley style design. But boy, it does ride nice. I've got no problem with the way it handles. Let's go ahead and make it turn right. It does ride really nicely. It's just the suspension on it. When I got it, it was a little on the soft side, so I did turn up the compression and the rebound a bit just to make the front end feel more planted. The dual Brembo discs up front work fantastically. The bike does like to stop. I can't feel the rear linked braking, so they call that the joined brake or the linked brake where you activate the rear brake and you get some front. I didn't feel it. That's not the kind of thing that I was noticing. There is a little bit of front end dive when you hit the rear brake, so could be an element of that. But it doesn't feel like you've activated the front brake, I guess is what I'm saying. Pulls power really nicely. If anyone were to tell me, well, this motorcycle's dyno numbers are between 70 and 75, depending on what you read, I'd completely agree with that. It feels like that. It is a portly beast. It's 600 pounds wet. Wet means a little more in this application because it does, in fact, have that very large 5-gallon gas tank. The battery that these came from the factory with, you're going to love this. Not a 16 amp hour battery. No, not a 20 amp hour battery. No, a full 30 amp hour battery. So that's up in the Harley-Davidson big block category of batteries. That's truly lawn tractor size. So Guzzi wanted to make sure that this thing had plenty of cranking power on board to turn over that big 1100 motor. It's smooth, man. This thing is just smooth as the day long. There is no shake. There is no vibration. No drive shaft slap. You get that on some of the bikes that are older, been around the block a few times. This certainly doesn't have that. The shifts are pronounced and very, very clean. Okay, and again, you want to use that rear brake. Pays to get your foot up onto the nubbin. Get your foot up onto the heel nubbin, and that'll be much easier to use that rear brake. Hopefully you guys can hear that motor a little bit. It's definitely a V-twin. It definitely has the... See that? The bike shifts to the right because it is a V-twin that's mounted across the frame rails. Shaft drive out the back end. Now, of course, when you are accelerating and you crack the throttle, the bike doesn't lean to the right because that energy is going out the drive shaft. It only shakes to the right or leans to the right, like BMWs and Goldwings, when you don't have any power going out the drive shaft. That's just, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Otherwise, when you're accelerating and you crack the throttle, the bike does not lean to the right because the power is going out the shaft to the back tire. That's the opposite reaction of twisting the throttle when you're underway. Yeah, really can't find out too much, can't come up with anything that I don't like about riding this bike at the moment. Wonky, the wonky rear brake. If you don't, I'm sure people are wondering, like, well, what happens if you don't put your foot up on the nubbin and you use the rear brake? Well, first of all, you're pretty much hyperextending your left foot. You're bringing your left foot up a lot. And it's awkward, And kind of get over there so you can see it. That's the nubbin I'm talking about right there. So use the rear brake, put your foot up on the nubbin, your heel up on the nubbin. Yeah. Now, we're going to let the camera run until we hop up on the freeway here, just because I know we've had a lot of folks that watch the reviews here and watch the channel. We're always wanting to know about, well, how does the bike do on the freeway, its noises, its behaviors and stuff. So, yeah, we're jumping up on the freeway right here. Going to let you guys experience the bike at freeway speeds. And that's a real good part of any test of a motorcycle. If you're going to buy a motorcycle, you absolutely should take it up on the freeway because that is where you're going to be doing a lot of your riding. It is smooth. I will say the power delivery on this is factory stock exhausts on it. Fuel injection, Magneti Marelli fuel injection system, and it is just absolutely smooth. There's no hiccups anywhere in the power band on this. It's smooth from an idle to whatever speed you want to go. Very, very nice power delivery. And that's the thing I want to say is this bike being a 1998, the previous owner clearly did a hell of a job maintaining it. It's dirty from a bike that's been ridden, but mechanically, I know he's been bringing it to our shop for the past couple of years. It's got almost new set of Metzler ME880s on it that we put on for him. The guy's a very careful owner, older gentleman and professional, and has a bunch of bikes. And really, I believe he bought this bike brand new. Oh, there's a good one for you. Brand new, $12,000 in 1998. That was a steep chunk of change. So here we are, top gear, fifth gear, 80 miles per hour, 4,000 RPM on the clock. Just dead stable, even with that big windshield on there. Quiet too, not a lot of noise, not a lot of wind noise. It's not shaking its head around. Really nice handling bike, freeway speeds. And motor doesn't sound too excited either. Motor sounds very happy, not overworked, overstressed. Yeah, really not, I mean, for clicking along at freeway speeds, there's just not a lot of drama on this machine. It's very planted. Yeah, I do like it. Of course, these were always the machine that I always had problems looking at it. Just from an aesthetic, I wasn't in love with the way it looked. We'll get it up to a ton here real quick. I'm not going full throttle. We're just going to do an easy little roll. There's 100, no problem. At 100, we weren't quite at 5,000 RPM, so... yeah, just a well-behaved motorcycle. Somebody's looking for a good bike to do some touring on. They want the nostalgia, or they want that Moto Guzzi brand. I'm going to say you're going to be hard-pressed to find one as good as this. This is an excellent example of the bike. Tiny bit of patina on it, so like the windshield mounts have got a little bit of pitting on them. Otherwise, clearly been very well maintained. Windshield's actually in quite good shape. It's quite clear. I gotta say, I think that this is an excellent example of that 90s generation, 90s, early 2000s, 90s and noughties Moto Guzzi V11EV. And if you'd like more information about the bike, we're going to put a full listing on this up on www.clevelandmoto.com in our used bike section. Be sure to check back to our channel or subscribe so you can be updated to videos like this when we post them. If you have comments about this motorcycle, other questions, things you'd like to know, we do answer all of our comments on a very regular basis. Go ahead and leave a comment down in the block. I will get back to you as soon as I see it, and I'll get you as much information as I possibly can. I hope everyone enjoyed the video, and remember, folks, to ride fast and take chances.